All right. I will
Um,
say hello and welcome back to another episode of All About Balance. And today I am joined by just visual media man, right? Photographer, videographer,
that's about
editing,
it, mate. That's about it.
Mr. James Bullingham. How's it going, sir? How you doing?
I'm very well. I'm very well. How are you?
Yes, I am good, my friend. I am good. I was going to say just now off air, but I'll say it now. Yeah, for the longest time, what's interesting about these sorts of pages on Instagram, like pages like yours, where you interact with the page, but you don't actually know one, the person's name behind it, two, what they look like, because this is essentially your business page, right? So
Yeah, yeah. It's a business page, but I kind of treat it like a personal one, just because it's easier to. I haven't got the time or the inclination to have two accounts or anything like that. So I just use it like and I speak to people as me, and I think
yeah,
that's kind of I think it works well for marketing myself really because it just comes across like as a person, which is what all businesses are, I suppose. Like
yeah.
regardless of the branding, the name, whatever, there's people behind it, and I think I think I want that to come across.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point to begin with, to be honest, because you're right that actually at the core of everything is people, right? And as you say, whether you stick a fancy branding on it, whether it's millions of dollars marketing like Apple or Amazon, or whether it's Instagram marketing like you or I do, like at the end of the day, the person behind it is just a person, right?
Yeah, yeah. Same as like whatever company it is, even if it's something really cheesy and businesses that they're doing, there's someone there's a social media manager somewhere that's reading it. So
Yeah.
regardless of how it comes across, there is actually someone there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that. I think when you have these sort of multinational, multi-global corporations, I think the idea of humanity can sort of get leaked a little bit, and it becomes a little bit more almost like the business is a human in the business is an entity in itself. Like the business can speak and think for itself, when actually that's not really the case, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So tell me a little bit about Bullingham. How did it start? How did you start? Why videography? Why photography? Why visual media?
So I've always been creative. I've always played music. I've always, well, my dad started taking me to gigs when I was like 10 years old. So I had a really awesome musical upbringing. Started playing guitar when I was about 13, that kind of stuff, and just played constantly. And so there's always been a creative part of my head. And then so I went to uni, studied psychology for some bizarre reason. Um,
Interesting.
kind of, um, yeah, it's just a bit odd, really. I enjoyed a lot of it, but then it just kind of I was too young, way too young to go to uni, way too young to make a decision about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I ended up when I left uni, I went to work in Aldi. Within 5 minutes of walking down the aisle, I was like, "This is horrendous. Need to leave." I lasted about 6 months and then moved home, split up with a partner at the time, moved back, and I did door-to-door sales for like 2 years and got pretty good at it. And it was multi-level marketing, so it was essentially like a pyramid scheme kind of thing. And you're basically trying to build a team, um, build that team to a certain size and a certain level of proficiency, where you can then step away, and kind of act as like a CEO of sorts or whatever. And it was very kind of Wolf of Wall Street, that kind of vibe. And at the time, I was super into it, and it was a really important learning experience for me. One of the most important at that time in my life. And then I kind of just started. I'd had slight struggles with my head before, like with depression and things like that, and I kind of just struggled a little bit. And towards the end, I'd lost a couple of teams and I'd kind of had to restart again, rebuild, keep going, rebuild again. Everyone quits, then you rebuild, keep going. And I just kind of run out of steam and I was kind of getting a bit sad. And I just missed that there was just something in my head that told me that I was missing something, that I was missing creativity. And so initially it was, I wanted to start writing for whatever reason. And a family member of mine, my cousin's husband, he ran a warehouse event space, and they used to throw raves, festivals, concerts, that kind of stuff. And so I actually had the opportunity to start there before I'd done all the door knocking and selling gas and necking and all that kind of stuff. But for whatever reason, chose to go down the whole multi-level marketing path. And then for whatever reason, it kind of came back around again. And so I jumped ship on the multi-level marketing, jumped into a marketing role. at this warehouse event space, and I was, and that was awesome. It was a really, really cool place to be. We were throwing parties, raves, working with some really cool people. I did everything from their social media marketing to artist liaison. So I'll be giving out riders, kind of bringing people to the stage, whatever, bring them into the building, kind of just generally being their guy in there, which was fascinating. Met some cool people, saw some weird shit. And then from there, I was hiring photographers and videographers all the time, and they'd come in, they'd have a can with me, they'd go out, take some photos, do some filming, come back, maybe have another can, and then get paid a few £100 and leave. And I'm like, that seems like a really cool job.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to give that a go. So I started teaching myself just in my spare time. When I was at the warehouse, I'd kind of bring in. I managed to convince them to pay for like Linda, which is like a online learning platform. So I started teaching myself there, bits of YouTube, stuff like that. And then I went on holiday to Utrecht with my girlfriend at the time. And I remember being sort of stood on a balcony, having a little bit of smoke, having a coffee, and just being like, how do I do this all the time? How do I not have to be stuck somewhere? And then it kind of just dawned on me that photography and videography is something that you don't have to have an office. You can do it remotely. You can kind of go wherever you want, be self-employed, blah, blah, blah. So I got home, immediately bought a Canon 70D from eBay, spent £400 on it, which is a fair amount for your first camera. Bought a nifty 50 mil for like £90. And then a month later, I took my first job, which was abandoned warehouse raves in Digbeth. And that was through someone at the warehouse that I was working in, the event space that I was working in as well. And I kind of took that job, and the video turned out like it's not amazing, but it's fucking cool for a first one, because it was dark, it was moody, it was like a rave in a really scruffy part of Digbeth, which I'm really, really fond of.
Is there a non-scruffy part of Digbeth?
It's starting to get like a little bit obviously just doing stuff. They're starting to knock some stuff down, but no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, it is.
I used to train. My first ever karate dojo was in kickboxing.
Oh, really?
It was in Digbeth. Yeah.
Is that towards?
Mate, it was some school hall. Fuck knows.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
Just some fucking school hall. Yeah. No idea.
How old were you then?
9.
How long did you do it for?
So I was there for about 4 years, and then I continued at a different school in Telford.
Oh, okay, cool. Do you enjoy kind of the stand-up stuff as well?
So that's my background. Yeah, that's entirely my background. But yeah, sorry, I didn't want to derail you. Carry on. So your first video in Digbeth.
But yeah, so that's kind of where it started, really. Just started. I took another job. What else was there? Just lots of event stuff, lots of raves and parties. And then I ended up the job at the venue didn't end well. It's a strange business, sort of clubland in general. It's quite dark in places, and there were just some characters that kind of crept in and kind of took over, and we lost the venue. It was taken over by someone else who kind of forced their way through.
Right.
And so I moved away. My cousin then went back into, my cousin's husband rather, went back into another business. He went bankrupt, lost everything.
Jesus Christ.
And then he's now one of my main clients, which is really cool. He runs he was in food trading before, and that's how he made his money to get into clubs and stuff. And now he's gone back to it, and he's doing really well. And I'm on retainer for him now, so I work with him all the time, which is really nice. But yeah, so I then moved to Chester, moved in with my girlfriend at the time, and poured pints, which I thoroughly loathed, and did that, taught cocktail classes, like it was just looking at lettuce in Chester, and it was just brutal.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been out in Chester, but it's just full of posh, like Chester's got, I've got a lot of time for it, but race days were rough.
Yeah.
It's constant, and I'm for whatever reason, I'm not made for normal jobs. Call that whatever you like, but I just can't do it. So I was kind of struggling along with that, and kind of pouring pints and then doing video on the side, and kind of I stumbled a lot, really. I started to really not think I was going to make it, and I stopped for probably, I didn't make anything at all for about 6 months. I'd split up with that girlfriend at the time, took that pretty badly, but moved into another flat in Chester and kind of just started carrying on doing what I was doing. And that's when I started training. So I started jiu-jitsu, and it's kind of weird, but everything kind of took off from there, really. I started at RGA Chester under Steve Jones, and I think about a month later, Steve shared something from Nick Gregorides. He shared his... it was like, you know, when you change jobs on and you register it on Facebook, or and it comes up, so Nick Gregorides started blah blah blah, started working at blah blah, and it was his Liberation Mentor program. So I clicked on it, watched the video, and then applied, and didn't think about it for a little while, and then got a message back saying, "Have you got time for a call?" Like, I think you scheduled in for a call, and like if you were accepted, you got the call. So I got the call from Nick. And we had a conversation. I was stood in the house that I was renting in Chester was it was like a 6 or 7 person house share, and it was scruffy as fuck. And it was, I just remember being stood in this kitchen, just kind of looking at this grimy floor, and then answering the phone to Nick, and just having this conversation where it was Nick's awesome. I had a really, really nice chat with him, and he kind of pretty much had a very similar conversation to the one that we just had, just a general kind of recap of where I was at the time, and what I wanted to fix, and what he thought he could do for me. And Nick was really, really good to me, and Nick helped me out and kind of took me onto his program, and that kind of changed everything, really. It kind of removed, like, I won't give too much away, but the general gist of it was remove a bunch of bad habits, introduce a load of good ones. Kind of he got me on a few different books to read, and kind of from there I started making videos again, started picking things up, and within 4 months I was full-time photography. So it just all went from one little thing, really, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton to digest there, right? A ton to unpack, a ton to digest. I think the first thing that comes through to me specifically is that it's obviously very evident that there was one very poignant trigger, and that's in some fashion autonomy, right? Autonomy in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't want to be, or couldn't cope with being tied down to your normal, quote unquote, 9 to 5, whether it be stacking shelves in Aldi or pulling pints in a slug of lettuce or whatever. And I think that a lot of the time that is the trademark of somebody that is creative, somebody that has the ability to do a little bit more than the general. And that's not to take anything away from the people that work the 9 to 5s, right? So I do it, right? Somebody has to do it. So, but before we even start, like, there's so many questions I have in my head, but the first thing is, like, what was the first gig your dad took you at 10?
The Darkness in 2004.
That's a fucking start, that is.
The Darkness with Ash, I believe. Yeah, it was The Darkness and Ash. And
That's a serious start.
Yeah, it was a weird one because we won tickets. Like, our next door neighbour won tickets on some radio show, and my dad had been going to gigs for like since he was a kid, and it's just something that I'd never introduced me to. I was 10 at the time, and so he'd go to gigs all the time, and then yes, we won these tickets, and we were right up in the gods. We were the furthest back. It was in Nottingham Arena, and we were the furthest back that you could possibly be. But I just had an amazing time, and then from there we started. Because we lived in Wanburn, which was probably about 20 minutes from Wolves. Yeah. So it was really easy to get to Wolves and Birmingham, which have got unbelievable music scenes. In the Civic all the time. I remember the first one after that, I saw UFO at the little, not the little Civic, it was the Wolfram Hall. So there's 3 of them. Yeah. Went to the Wolfram, and I was right at the front. And the bass player, who he passed away really recently, actually, and he was kind of laying with his back, kind of like he was laying on the floor, like kind of directly in front of me, and just as he got up, just like launched his towel, and that's like literally over there. I've kept it to this day. One of those ones, but yeah, started going to gigs pretty much every weekend. Like, I remember seeing Stone Sour for about 13 quid. Yeah, I think that was on the Come What May tour, and then like everyone from. It was like Korn, Avenged Sevenfold, Slipknot, Stone Sour, loads of classic rock stuff as well. So it was like Priest, Ozzy, saw Sabbath as well. So I mean, look, you name it, I've probably seen it from that kind of scene, and that was a real privilege. It was great
Absolutely.
to see all of them, and like, we went to download quite a lot, and then I started
Same.
going with my friends shortly afterwards, and
Mhm.
yeah, so that was yeah. What about yourself? What was your first gig?
My first gig was Bullet for My Valentine in the NEC in Birmingham.
What year was
Uh,
this?
oh Jesus, I would have been 13
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
So me and my friends got the train from Telford to Birmingham, went, watched it. The Bring the Horizon, the Atreyu were supporting.
That's a
Bring
solid lineup as well.
Bring Me got booed off stage. Uh, yeah, it was interesting, but yeah, like you, like I've seen so many bands at the Wolfram, so many bands at the Civic. When I was 17, I went to go and watch Skindred at the Wolfram,
Oh yeah.
and I lost my glasses and both of my shoes. So I drove back at like 12 midnight with no glasses in the pitch of like, oh Jesus, that was an experience. Yeah, like yeah, it's interesting you say that. Like, I think now, do you still go to gigs?
Yeah, yeah,
See, for me, like I went to so many gigs. I suspect you probably went to more, but like I went to so many gigs in those years between 13 and sort of 21 that like now when I go to gigs, it kind of feels like it's not for me anymore. Like, do you remember the magic when you were 10? Do you remember that magic that you felt?
yeah.
Like, I don't feel that magic anymore.
It's different. It's definitely different. I tend to go with my dad, so I don't go too wild or anything. I don't like. I'm not
Sure.
like pissed at my tree. I'm not like, and it's a very different experience when you go to a gig with your mates and you get hammered before, and you're all like, there's a totally different atmosphere.
Mm.
Um, but both of them are both really wonderful experiences. But I don't know. It's certainly slowed down. It's slowed down over the last few years just because of just life getting in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a very similar period between like 13 to about 18. Pretty much from when I left for uni. That was just a really heavy period of going to most weekends.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's something as well that like, because I remember I was in the O2 in Birmingham, the little one, the O2 Institute,
yeah,
the O2 Academy, just off the roundabout, right?
yeah,
And I was seeing Enter Shikari there, right? And I mean I've seen Enter Shikari maybe 15 times, right? Something
yeah.
absolutely ludicrous, right? And I remember standing in the middle of the crowd, and I was just like I remember looking around me and just being like this is fucking mental. Like you've got 300 to 500 people. I
It's
don't drink, right? So I've never been drunk at a gig ever. And just watching people, like Shikari used to do this thing where they'd make people make a human pyramid, like 4 human pyramids in the.
yeah. I've seen them a couple of times. Yeah,
Yeah. And like I was stood in the middle just looking up at 4 human pyramids around me and just understanding how magical it is that a group of people that have never met each other, that are so connected by these 4 guys on stage and so connected to the music
yeah,
that they're willing to literally risk their fucking lives, right, on a floor that is it's like half a swimming pool of beer and vodka, right? And they're just going to make a human pyramid. And I'm just like that's the magic of gigs to me, the connection that you feel and felt to these artists at that time, at a time when from 13 to 18, like you're so vulnerable, really. And
yeah,
these people give you hope. You know, they give you hope that there is one-ship and kinship and love in this world. And when I go to gigs now, like, and I feel that, like, I try to feel the crowd, it doesn't feel like they're looking for the same things. And that's something that's upsetting. But obviously for you going with your dad, like that's a beautiful father-son thing to do, right?
yeah. It definitely is. Yeah, we yeah, have a lot of fun together.
What's the
Yeah.
best gig you've ever been to? If I had to pull it out of you.
The one that sticks out to my mind is Iron Maiden at Download 2007. My first download. It was when the stage was at a totally different position. It was when it was in the middle of the track, and the way they positioned it was kind of like a bowl.
Right.
So it was Iron Maiden would just. There's just one particular moment. The whole day was incredible. The lineup was unreal. I remember it was Maiden, Evanescence were on before. They got booed a lot and lots of piss thrown at her, which I felt that was like I really liked them as well. So I didn't get it.
Yeah, great band.
A ton of these like die-hard Iron Maiden fans that were like, fuck it, I'll throw him all sorts at her. And she took it like a champ. She got on it, she did it, carried on. And like, yeah, I was thoroughly impressed by her. And who else was there? Stone Sour were there. They were doing Come Up Mate. And at that time, I was obsessed with Come On Mate. I still am. I listened to that album all the way through yesterday, actually, on a drive. They were there. It was Mastodon, Lamb of God, Chimera,
My Chemical Romance, Evanescence, Killswitch Engage, Lamb of God,
Killswitch.
Mastodon, Papa Roach,
yeah,
Billy Talent. Yeah, that's a serious lineup, isn't it? That's a
Yeah,
serious lineup. Linkin Park on Saturday. Jesus.
I just went for the Sunday.
Me and you can no longer be friends.
I went for the Sunday because I was at Velvet Revolver in Cardiff on the Thursday.
Okay.
So I couldn't afford the two, so I went to Velvet Revolver on Thursday, and then which they were pretty much the reason I picked up the guitar.
Yeah, I mean, me looking at this now, like, yeah, Velvet Revolver on Friday. We're at Download Megadeth, Black Cherry, Dragon Force, Shikari, Korn, Paramore. Jesus. On the Saturday, there's like Bowling for Soup, Machine Head, Slayer, Linkin Park, 30 Seconds to Mars, Biffy Clyro. Yeah, there's some Gallows were there. Jesus, As I Lay Dying were there. Bring Me were there. Yeah, that's an unbelievable lineup, right? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, so for first download, that was a seriously mad experience. I loved it.
That's pretty serious.
But yeah, I just remember being stood kind of as the sun's going down, and then Maiden are playing Fear of the Dark.
Oh God!
And like this choir of like 80,000 metalheads, and I was just like, I've got goosebumps now thinking about it.
Yeah,
and yeah, that one sticks out in my head. I've seen plenty of good gigs, but that's the one that it was just sort of defining really for me. It was kind of like, oh, this is home. This is where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, I get that. There are weird serendipity moments that happen in life, especially at gigs, I think, because music is something that's so unbelievably powerful, right? Unbelievably important, unbelievably connecting between humans. And you know, the music that you connect with is not because necessarily that artist put it out, but it's what is happening in your life at the time when you're listening to that music, and those are the memories that you hold on to, right? I think, yeah, Christ, there's some serious moments that you've had at gigs, I imagine. Same for me.
Yeah, definitely. What's your favorite?
See, I'm torn between two, and one is probably a little bit out there. So one is the O2 in Wolverhampton, the old one, the one that fit like 200 people in it. The old where the HMV was.
I don't remember that. What year is this?
Oh God, I'm pretty sure it could have been Birmingham. I think it was Birmingham. The old HMV Institute. Yes.
So you got the HMV Institute still there.
Okay.
And then you've got there was the Carlin Academy as well, which was opposite Scruffy Murphy's. Is it on Dale End?
Yes, possibly. There was about 200 people, right? Yeah. And it was Chase and Status on Christmas Eve.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And like, I must have lost 10 kilos that night. It was unbelievable. Like, everyone but me and my mate were out of their minds on pills. And it was just insane. Like, it was insane. Or I think the best gig, it's difficult. There's two. One was Sabbath at Download. And there was 275,000 people in the crowd.
Or 14?
Yeah, 13 or 14, whatever it was. And it was kind of bittersweet because whilst the music was still incredible, it was so upsetting to see Ozzy so frail. Like, he's just so frail. He couldn't move he just clung on to the mic as if it was a walking stick, right? And that was kind of upsetting. But the other one was me and my friends went to, I was already in London, but we went and watched Linkin Park for the last gig before Chester died.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of sticks with us now because it was the last time, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that was insane. I mean, I got Chester tattooed on my arm pretty much after that. Yeah. But yeah, those moments were, because again, you know, the moments that you talk about, you know, they're shared with people, right? Like, it's not that shared with people. Like the thing you get a download is you start talking to people in crowds that you've never met and you're never going to see. You're not even going to stand next to them for the rest of the gig. Like they're going to disappear over there somewhere.
Yeah.
And yet,
the level of kindness that you share between each other for whatever brief moment it is,
yeah.
or even if it's just kind of look over your shoulder as a big drop and you both headbanging, or you both like just a hand over your shoulder or something like that. It's special, man.
Yeah, it really is. It really is special. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how to describe that to anyone else. It's something you have to experience, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's something to do with like that amount of people being together at once, sharing one experience it's like with something, if it's especially if it's music that means something to you, that you kind of listen to every day for so long, and that you kind of attach to certain parts of your memory and parts of your life, and then you can see other people enjoying it just as much as you are, going just as wild as you are. Yeah, there's something, I think there's something to do with that amount of people all together focusing on one thing is
collectively free, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's the collective freedom that I think is what interests me about what you said earlier about the 9 to 5 thing. Is there's the autonomy, the freedom to be behind the camera, the freedom to document, the freedom to be your own boss, the freedom to have a schedule that's kind of yours, right? That's something that triggers in me, especially. That's what came across in your thoughts. And you talked about Greg earlier. Like, I don't know this gentleman. I don't know the scheme behind him. So please, if you could tell me a little bit more about that, that would be cool.
So Nick Gregorides.
That's it. Sorry.
Yeah, I believe he was. I think he might have been Roger Gracie's first black belt, possibly.
Okay.
That might be totally wrong, but something along those lines. But yeah, so I just noticed something that Steve shared on Facebook. I clicked it, filled it in, and then had a conversation with him. And then through this phone call, he made me feel like we were quite similar, and that we both shared that not wanting to be, not wanting to do a 9 to 5, and just that instant sort of loathing of it. He shared a very similar story about him working in an office, getting like a relatively good job. Everyone was pleased for him, and he hated it. And that's exactly how I felt as well. Like everyone was like, "Oh, you've got." Like I remember when I first got that job in Aldi, like people were like, £8 an hour is like all right for your first job out of uni, and I was like, yeah, that's great, yeah. But like trying to accept it, and then within literally a minute of whoever the manager, I can't remember the guy's name now, whoever the manager was, just saying, yeah, just go and collect all the card off the aisles or whatever. And the second I had the thought as I was turning around, I was like, oh, this sucks. And that never left me. I remember driving back that day, crying my eyes out, like, this can't be what life is. This can't be what I've just gone through. Like, I remember uni being really difficult because I was a shit student, because I wasn't in the right subject. And I kind of struggled through it. And I was like, I can't believe I went all through all of that for the next 50, 60 years, then death. No, that can't, like, and yeah, I just remember bawling my eyes out on the drive back. But that's something that Nick made me feel like I shared with him. I think clearly a lot of other people do as well. And yeah, so we kind of had this conversation, and he just turned around and he says, bro, I think I can help you out. And then so he took me onto his program. I was really, really lucky. I was one of the first people to do it, actually. So I was, one of the first few. And then I remember coming off the phone and then just kind of saying to myself, oh, this is where you change your life. This is where everything changes. And it was. That's how it happened. The first thing he did was get me to buy a book called What Colour is Your Parachute? And it kind of helps you to figure out what you want, and kind of, it wasn't super relevant to me because I already knew what I wanted to do, but there were certainly elements of it that really, really helped. And then Nick's obviously a big proponent of meditation, so that was the first thing that we did. And then there's several other things that you go through. His main thing is religiously tracking progress, and it was the accountability, really, because like you can read all this stuff all you like, you can have the information in your head, but if there's no one there to hold you accountable, like, I mean, obviously you should hold yourself accountable, but that's difficult.
It is difficult.
And that's what you pay coaches for. is that accountability. And it's certainly something that I've noticed since I've left this program, is that when I lack the accountability, I'm not as on it. I'm just not as good at keeping up with my habits, because there's no one there. I remember going through it and just being like, do not disappoint Nick. Do not disappoint this guy.
Mm.
And I did really well out of it. And it's the reason why I'm at the stage I am now with the business, because I followed all his advice and took it. And obviously it has dipped off since. And I think that can be shown in the stalling of progress. So it's something that I'm working on. I'm definitely considering investing in some coaching now, because I feel like that sort of accountability is something that, and yeah, that's exactly what you pay for, isn't it? Really, as well as all the knowledge and everything else that they kind of bring together. That accountability was the main thing, really, because it was someone because like the first thing he was like, when you've done your meditation every day, send me a message, and blah blah blah, and then you'll carry on. So we just developed every day so we used an app called Done, and it's just a really simple habit checking app where you just click Done when you've done it, and then it comes up with a bright color and a happy noise and whatever, and it just, even that little noise, just kind of like, oh, that's a little achievement, and it sort of conditions you to keep doing it. But yeah, so basically just religiously tracking your progress, removing a bunch of bad habits, introducing good ones, and just, his kind of thing is like all his habit. The way you do one thing is how you do everything. And those general principles kind of forced a bunch of bad shit out. I'm working in pubs. It's really difficult to not drink quite a lot. So like, you finish your shift and then like, here you go, mate, here's a beer. And it's quite difficult to say no, because I'm English and I'm polite and I like beer. So it's just sort of, and because I was living there alone, my workmates were my mates.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to socialise without drinking. And then before you know it, you're kind of 8 pints deep and you've got to be up for work at 7 a.m. And that was obviously had a really detrimental effect on my life in general. But just removing that was, it seemed, it was difficult, but it just seemed really obvious, and it worked a treat, clearly. But yeah, lots of little things, removing bad habits and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to the accountability thing, right? And I think the thing that I relate to from the accountability side is this might be a bit of a strange roundabout point, but I'll hopefully make it make sense. You know, the thing that coronavirus or the lockdown has taught me specifically is that nobody needs a fixed location in order to complete their job, whatever that is. Whether your job is a visual media person, whether your job is an IT engineer, whether your job is a podcaster, whether your job is whatever, right? There is an ability for you to complete that job essentially from anywhere. Now, of course, it doesn't make sense for people like nurses and these kinds of people to work from home because they don't have the facilities, and it's way more practical and efficient to have the facilities in one specific area, right? AKA a hospital or a doctor's surgery or whatever it is. However, what that comes with the need for accountability. Like when you're working in Aldi, for instance, or whether you're working in an office doing a 9 to 5, whether you're working in Morrison's or whatever, there is a level of accountability there because your manager is on shift there all the time, right? And that can feel very oppressive, dependent on your manager's characteristics and the way that they manage, or it can feel really liberating and it can feel great, right? But still, the accountability is there. Whereas if you're working from home, or like yourself, you're self-employed, subcontracting, whatever, the accountability is only with you, right? The accountability is with you or your client. Now you can offset and like harvest that out to the client if that works in your favor. But generally, if you don't get the work done, it's on you, right? It's not on the client. The client just doesn't pay you. So the accountability factor, as you said, is incredibly obvious, but it's obvious in the workspace too. Just people don't want to take the accountability for themselves. And I think that taking that accountability, accepting the autonomy and ownership of your own actions and your own life is something that is really hard, right?
Yeah.
but something that's incredibly rewarding as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because when you don't do that, it's very easy to just be the victim. It's very easy to just be like, oh, this happened because of that person or this occurrence or that occurrence or whatever. Whereas when you're able to say, well, this happened because I did it, and this happened because I did this, this, and this, and you're able to map out, not only does that give you a sense of, I don't want to use the word power, but
I think it was confidence. Like, it kind of showed that, like, every time I'd take another step, I was like, oh, your life's improving because you made these steps. And
yes.
I remember talking to Nick through a lot of it. I'd be like thanking him. I'd be like, thank you so much. He'd be like, stop thanking me, thank yourself. This is stuff that you've done. You've made these improvements.
Yes, and I think that's a huge thing as well. Like, you talked a little bit about struggling mentally at points in your life, and maybe we can get into that a little bit more, but I think everyone does, right? I
Yeah.
really think everyone does. And I think in some fashion, I mean, of course, there may well be some people in the world that have never struggled mentally ever, and that's cool. If you have, congratulations. But I think the vast majority of people will have seen some form of trauma, and as an offset of that trauma, as a result of that trauma, will struggle with something mentally, right?
Yeah, I think everyone's got their own hang-ups. Everyone's got things that have impacted their life, because it's all relative, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. And on the topic of struggling mentally and whatever, why did you choose philosophy? Psychology, sorry.
Had nothing to do with that. It was the only subject at A level that it's the only subject that I really enjoyed, and it was kind of the only course that took me on.
Fair enough.
I flopped. I think the main thing for me with education was that so much pressure was put on us at school that your GCSEs are the most important exams of your life, and that was really, really heavily drilled into us. That by the time I got to my A levels, I'd run out of steam. I was done. I was like, I don't want to do this again. So, I remember being at college and kind of being excited to be there. Like, I'd got into a decent college because I did okay at school, and it was kind of like a nice mid step between there and uni. So it was exciting, and we were going to parties and stuff. But I remember just getting there and starting the work and being like, oh, I'm not ready to do this again. Like, I've just got no steam. I've got no desire to learn any of this stuff. And I think a lot of that is probably because I didn't choose the right subjects. I think I took a little bit too much from other people's perspectives and didn't choose the things that I wanted to do, and chose things that I thought would give me the best job. Like, I remember going into college, the idea was be a doctor, and like, I don't want to do that. I've never wanted to do that. It was just, oh, that's something where people make lots of money, and you did good in school. Like, you got a lot of A's in your GCSEs, but that in reality is fuck all. It doesn't mean anything at all. But I remember being sat in a chemistry class, and I sucked at chemistry. I got an E, I think, and that was probably the highest grade I'd got through the whole thing. And I remember this girl that was sat in front of me. She turned around after getting like a similar grade to me, and she went, "Well, we fucked it, mate. We're not being doctors." And I remember thinking, you know what, you're absolutely right. And I just made the wrong decision. Like, if I'd gone with what I really wanted to do, I'd have studied music tech. I'd have probably done graphics. I'd have done just a bunch of creative stuff. But even then, in 2000, it was like 2010, I would have been choosing my subjects. Even then, people were like, you can't be a full-time creative. Like, there's no, and probably at the time that was probably an element of truth to that. But it was nowhere near the actual reality of it, and certainly nowhere near the reality of today, where being a full-time creative is good money when you can get it. So I just chose the wrong things. And yeah, I think that's probably why I wasn't so good. And then by the time I got to college and studied psychology, I was again, by the time I finished my A levels, I was like, still got no more steam to do this. Don't really want to do this again. And then that, coupled with being at uni, having your independence, partying a lot, being around a bunch of new people, and then whatever kind of happens during that period, I just wasn't set to ever do well in higher education. I got a 2.2 and straight C's A level, so I was bang average. And that just reflected how that I just wasn't supposed to be there. Like, I'd have got more experience. I'd have got probably the same experience by going and doing a season in Ibiza and just partying, getting it out of me, and then I'd have probably gone traveling a little bit more and just figured out a little bit more about myself and just tried new different things. I think the key for young people is just go out and try as many different things as you can possibly try.
Yes.
Because one of them's going to be the thing that you love and one of them's going to be the thing that you want to spend the rest of your time doing. But you just, through like the regular system that we have through school, uni and college, you just don't get that time. You don't get the time to choose and you're kind of forced into making certain decisions.
I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. I think that there's something that's really, really oppressive about school. And that's that, you know, as you say, and my school was similar. My school was also a Catholic school, right?
Oh, okay. That's another level.
That's another level, right? Like, yeah. And I think, you know, the thing that you find, as you rightly say, is by the time you get to GCSE, it's not just that you're studying for one exam, or in A levels, you're studying for 4. You're studying for 12, right? 13 sometimes, right? So you've got 13 exams in the space of, what is it, like 3 weeks or whatever? And you're expected to not just, you know, and you're 16, 15, you know, you're super young, and you're expected to not just do this, but you're then expected to have made choices that, in the word of school, is going to impact the rest of your life, right? Mm-hmm. And as you know, and as I know, like at the end of the day, it doesn't really affect the rest of your life necessarily.
I've never had anyone look at a single one of my grades. I could have lied on every single one of them and still be in the position I am now. I didn't, by the way.
Right.
But
right.
I definitely could have.
Yeah, and the only time I've ever been asked for my grades was in an apprenticeship one time, and all they cared about, or they just said, "Have you got C's in maths and English?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Cool."
Yeah, it's just their way of like moron-proofing their job.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think the pressure that you put on kids to have everything figured out, and if you think like at 15, I had nothing figured out. I don't have anything figured out now, right?
Yes, I've got no idea. I'm blagging the whole thing.
Exactly. And you expect a 15-year-old to tell you what they want to do. Like for me, I wanted to be a riot squad officer. That's what I wanted to be. Right?
That's cool.
And yeah, like I really wanted to. And I remember that I couldn't get in because of my eyes and I'm just blind as fuck. But, you know, like I remember saying to my teacher, like, I'm not going to uni. And they were like, why? And I'm like, because I want to be a riot squad officer. And they were like, oh, right. And I mean, I'm nowhere near a riot squad officer now. Right?
Like, did they not have an argument for it? Because I can't imagine they would.
Yeah. So, I mean, they said that, oh, you can do better in the police if you go to uni, you can go in at a higher rank and all this bollocks. But like, my argument back was, I don't want to do that. If I'm going to get to the position, I want to get there from the bottom upwards. But really, I think behind that, I was similar to you. I just had no steam left to learn. Like, and learn in the fashion that I was being told to learn, right? I wanted to learn what I wanted to learn when I wanted to learn it, right? Yeah. I wanted to learn things that were interesting to me, not learn things that were going to pass an exam. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, like you said just now about getting back into photography and videography and teaching yourself via Linda and YouTube and things like that. Like, I think that now, more so than ever, to be a creative is not easy. Easy is the wrong word, but accessible.
Simple.
Right? Yeah. Like all you have to do, the resources are there for you to do that.
Yeah.
Your talent behind a camera, your skill, I hate the word talent, your skill behind a camera, your skill with an editing tool, your skill in your brain of how you view a project to be is yours, right? And you've done that because you could put your head out of your window in your room right now and take 500 photos if you wanted to. And there's probably going to be 50% of them that are all right. And there's going to be 10% of them that you really like, right? Yeah. Maybe. Who knows?
Some might be a little bit off, but we'll.
But, you know, like these, whereas to be a brain surgeon, right? There are way more rigorous and regimented methods for learning that. Like you couldn't just go to someone and be like, can I open your brain? I mean, you could, but you're probably going to get arrested, right? Whereas you could go on the street and be like, can I take your photo? And with the right amount of, with the right kind of approach, like they're going to say yes, right? It's probably going to be fine. Or you could go to an event and be like, can I take photos? I'm happy to do it for free. And the answer is yes. And that experience build up, the creative, I think, is something that's so much more accessible than it ever has been. And I think autonomous monetary incomes in one where you define how you do things and what you do things is going to be the way forward. I really think so.
Yeah, I'm definitely of that belief as well. Yeah, I kind of think like with the internet, you got no excuses. Everything that you want to learn is there. Even if it costs you a few quid, like like go and pour some pints, do whatever, make some money, and then kind of pay for your course or whatever. It's going to be nowhere near as catastrophically expensive university is, and you're going to get more out of it.
Yeah. Yep. But I think the difficulty that people have, and I want to put this to you and see what your thoughts are, is, and you'll have known this a little bit because of psychology, I suspect, but there's almost a choice paralysis, right? Where the problem you have, one of the problems that kids have, is that there's so many opportunities to do so many different things.
Yeah.
How do you know what's right for you, right? How do you know? And for you, obviously, for you were saying that, you know, your thoughts are to just go and try as many things as you can, right? But how do you pick the things that you're going to try? Do you see my point?
Chance, just going. I think go traveling is probably the best advice I could give. Go and throw yourself into some uncomfortable situations. I mean, not even uncomfortable, like it's a holiday, but like go and get yourself an Interrail ticket. Go traveling around. When you run out of money, go and get a job, and then you'll realise that the job that you've picked sucks and you want to do something else, and you'll be forced to make that decision of what's bearable, and then you'll gradually make those decisions and gradually come to, I don't know, I mean, everyone's different and everyone's going to have vastly different experiences doing anything, but yeah, if I could go back now and do it, I'd sack uni off and I'd just go travelling, and I'd probably end up at the same place. I think I would. I think part of it's just there's a creative part of me that has to kind of express things and wants to do that in order to make a living. And I think I'd have always kind of come out the same way. I think I'd have probably knocked doors for 2 years and
Sure.
Not knocking that at all. It was one of the most valuable experiences of my life. But do you know what I mean? You take different paths to it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and you know, I've said this on the podcast before, and you know, I say it again. Like, the best job I've ever had was Burger King.
Burger King.
Yep.
Why was it the best job you've ever had?
It's the best job I've ever had because, I mean, you've done the corporate thing, right? Selling door to door, building pyramid schemes, building teams, whatever. The thing that becomes apparent is that at the crux of all of that is politics, right? It's people trying to one up the other person. It's people trying to snake the other people. It's people trying to cut them off. It's people trying to be better than the next person, but be better than them in a fashion that isn't necessarily conducive with their skill or their effort, right? It's all of this political sniping horse shit that you deal with in a corporate job, right? Now, the job that I'm in at the moment doesn't really have much of that, to be honest. And it's actually a really wonderful place to work. But the greatest example of no politics is Burger King, right? Because what politics have you got? What, you want to flip burgers more than the other person? Fine. Do it. Fine. Nobody wants to be there, right? Nobody wants to flip burgers. Nobody wants to serve the customers. Nobody wants to clean the unit. But because collectively nobody wants to do that, the teamwork is phenomenal. Was phenomenal, at least.
Yeah, I've experienced something similar. Like the slugging lettuce was very similar. Like, because no one wanted to be there because it was it was brutal. It was like you were constantly understaffed. I mean, that's more of a slight to Stonegate and kind of the way they run the companies and the way they treat their employees.
Sure.
Just their management style and the way they make money is that they understaff everyone, push everyone way too hard, and then suddenly there's glass everywhere and there's nothing's going right, and we've got none of the right stock in because no one could do it earlier because we were too busy, and you had to go and serve tables and blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And kind of, I remember particularly during race days when it was just utter chaos.
Yeah.
You'd kind of just be looking across at your colleague on the same bit of bar as you, kind of like, well, this is rough. Let's just get through this, and kind of and that, you just help each other out, and that kind of, and it was the reason why I stayed so long, and the reason why anyone stays so long in that job is the people.
Yes,
it's kind of that camaraderie in in something shit.
Yeah,
that kind of sticks people together.
Yeah, so the Burger King I worked at was at a service station, right? And you know, you get every weekend, the football teams will pass through that service station.
Yeah.
And like the fans, right? So you're going to get 15, 20 buses of 70 drunk geezers that want grease food, right? Or V Festival. You remember V Festival?
I went in 2011.
Right. V Festival is a 7-minute drive from that Burger King service station.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So everyone going home is going to the motorway.
Yeah.
On the motorway is that fucking service station. So V Festival, you'd have lines, like there'd be, you know, a 40-minute queue, and we're serving customers every 3 minutes, right? Like that's how many people we're talking. And you're there at Burger King during this. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not glamorous in any way, shape or form, but it's very similar to your experience with Slug and Lettuce. And I think that the camaraderie teaches you that there's more to life than the hierarchical understanding of what a corporate job is. And, you know, like you talk about Wolf of Wall Street and that sort of stuff. Hopefully there was less cocaine and less illegal substances and less illegal dealings and all that sort of stuff. And it's up to you whether you answer that question or not. But yeah, but like, you know, I think now, having worked from home for this sort of pandemic lockdown thing, I get the same amount of work done. I save 2.5 hours of my day from commuting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do other things with that time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of this was kind of, Tim Ferriss talked about it in the 4-Hour Work Week, which I listened to the audiobook a few years ago actually, and I remember at the time thinking, oh, okay, this sounds like the way that the world should run, and obviously the pandemic has just kind of accelerated that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know whether companies will just act like elastic bands and try and spring back to what was, because obviously that's a far easier control method, right? If everyone is in one place at one time, at a certain time till a certain time, it's very easy to control and measure that, right? Where it's very difficult, in the other hand, to have metrics to measure the output of work, I suppose. And that's important for some companies.
Yeah, I think they'll have to kind of balance that between how much rent they're paying on their ridiculous corporate buildings that probably aren't going to be. It's probably the payoff's not going to be worth it, and I'd imagine that a lot of those buildings are going to become flats and studios and kind of houses.
Yeah, this is my thought. Like, the company I work for is a property company, right? So what they do in London is they build and purchase office buildings, renovate them, make them look super fancy and super nice and really nice places to be. They make restaurants around them. They make like complexes, compounds kind of thing. And then they rent that space out to companies. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm sat here thinking, that doesn't sound like a long-term business model, right? But speaking to my boss, because I said to him, like, do you see this company being around in a couple of years? Mm-hmm. And he was like, you'd be super surprised at what's happening. What's happening in London especially is companies now are going back to British Land, the place that I work, and they're saying, we want more office space because now we want our people to go back, but we want them socially distanced. So they're essentially doubling all of their office space.
No way, that's crazy.
That is crazy to me.
That never crossed my mind.
Right, because to me, I was similar to you, thinking that, okay, these companies haven't failed with all their workforce working from home.
Yeah.
Surely that is a massive cost saving if you don't have to pay for rent.
Yeah.
And yet businesses are being like, I know, let's pay more rent. What?
That's wild. I wonder how that's going to pan out.
Well, exactly. If anything, it's going to make everything more expensive, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't make any sense to me.
It makes, just as little sense to me as well.
But yeah, I mean, I think, for me personally, I think if I was to give any, if somebody came to me and said, what would you do if you had your time back? I'd probably do the same things, to be honest, because the job that I am doing now has been extremely profitable for me in the financial sense. And everything. I mean, thank you. This is my missus. So it's funny. Fucking everyone says this, right? Ever since I started to do the Zoom meetings to record the podcast, everyone's like, "Oh my god, like your house, like your place is amazing." And I'm like, "Yeah, literally, what happened was at the start of lockdown, my missus was put on furlough, and she was like, I'm bored,' and I was like, 'Do something,' and she's like, 'I'm going to redecorate the flat,' and I'm like, 'Okay.' This is what we ended up with."
I mean, it looks awesome. I love Chesterfield sofas. It looks cool.
They're definitely fake from eBay, but yeah, the Chesterfields are, mate, there's no fucking way I'm buying real Chesterfields. Are you crazy? But yeah, they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. And, you know, the artwork is an assortment of places and assortment of people, and will eventually fill this wall that you can see there. Yeah, that's the kitchen. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, the job that I'm doing now has afforded me a 1-bed flat in London, and, you know, there's nothing that I can complain about, you know, like it's also allowed me to continue the other revenue streams that I'm attempting to build. And, you know, what I would say to people is, you know, diversify, I think.
What else are you working on?
So I have Pantheon. Have you heard of Pantheon?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Pantheon submission grappling. I'm one of the directors of that, alongside Liam Kahn and Mr. Sam Townend. I am doing the podcast, right? There's no financial incentive to the podcast. I'm not sponsored. I'm not, and to be honest, I'm not really looking to be either, because then there's all the ownership, creative control bullshit that gets involved. Mm-hmm. I'm also attempting to run a jiu-jitsu clothing brand.
Yeah, I've seen actually. I've looked at I looked at the Instagram account. Yeah, looks cool.
With all 3 photos. Yeah, we could talk about that a little bit if you want. And there's also potentially, well, I'm doing a little bit of writing for Attack the Back as well, which is a jiu-jitsu sort of.
Yes, I saw as well. How you finding that?
I love that. I mean, I was going to say at the very start, when you were talking about your creative side, like, I don't really have one, to be honest. I am somebody that.
I don't believe that. There's something there. Just find it.
Yeah. So what I have been trained, I guess, or I've trained myself to be incredibly analytical. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's something that my job has done. And that's something that my early childhood has done as well. However, for as long as I can remember, I've written, whether I wrote stories as a kid or like mini novels or this or that. I used to write music when I was a kid. Like, I played instruments as a kid, but I was never any good at it. But I just loved the idea of that, you know, freedom, that expression. But the way that I could do that, the way that I could put that out was writing. So, as I say, I wrote a couple of songs for a couple of bands when I was a kid, and, you know, like, bands as in like a band in a garage, not a real band. Do you know what I mean? Like, just some fucking lads kicking around.
Yeah, I was in one of those. We never actually did a gig. We just
same
and played Velvet Revolver, Slither, and AC/DC. Let Me Put My Love Into You over and over and over again.
And it was great fun.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And then, like, I'd started to get into the MMA stuff and watching and whatever. And actually, the guy that runs Attack the Back, Richard, he messaged me on Instagram and he said, "Can we have a call?" And I was like, "Sure." And I had a chat with him, and he was like, "Look, I'm looking for a writer. Do you want to do it?" And I was like, yeah, I want to do it. Yeah, I want to do it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I love it. Like, he's been really good to me, really, really good to me, because what I'm not is a journalist, right? I don't understand journalism necessarily. I don't really get the nuances of it. And equally, I have a 9-to-5, and I have various other commitments that in my life, that I can't be watching Twitter and Instagram all the time for breaking news to then get an article out straight away. But what I can do, and what I love to do, is long form, descriptive, in-depth writing, right? So that's what he said for me to do. That's the brief that I have from him. And yeah, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal because and sorry, I know I'm about to cut you off. Like, the thing that's important to me in the writing is expression of myself and expression of the people I'm writing about. And long form really allows me to do that.
So have you found writing the articles, has it been kind of like a sort of enjoyable creative process of actually putting it together? What's that felt like?
Yeah, phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal. Like, you know, it's the only problem with it is I get really invested, right? And then I've written like half a book for an article. Do you know what I mean? And then I've then got to whittle it down. Like, the first article I wrote was a preview for I think it was Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, and I wrote like 9,000 words, and I was like, okay, I probably can't put that out as 9,000 words. So I think I dialed it back to something like 4,000 or something like
I
that.
think that's totally natural. Almost every video that I ever make is too long and it's completely self-indulgent. And then I have to go, hang on, who's going to watch this? How's it going to come across? And then actually put my sort of more marketing sort of head on and not just be quite so self-indulgent with the edits. But yeah, like I actually applied on Attack the Back's website as a for the photography stuff on there and didn't receive anything back. So you know, if you want to reply, that'd be. No, I got a little. I remember just applying for loads. This was probably a year and a half ago, just before I'd gone full time. I remember firing over a load of messages and looking at his website and kind of looking through all of his stuff because I'm a fan. Like I like his work.
Of course, man.
Cool.
But like, yeah, I mean, the thing about Richard, the reason why he employed me or got me to write is because he's so fucking busy.
I can imagine, yeah. Because he's based in Somerset and then traveling out to London and everything else all the time.
That's my understanding, yeah. And, you know, this guy went to Jiu-Jitsu Summer Week. He's gone to Wales recently to do some videography stuff. He's, you know, and he's also got his 9 to 5 that he does. He's got, you know, his own social life. He's got his own training. He's got the website. He's got his own photography. He's now doing astrophotography. Like, the man's got shit on his plate. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like,
imagine, yeah. What do you do for a living?
Sorry?
What do you do for a living?
He does some SEO type stuff. So search engine optimization stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. That's kind of pretty super well rounded, really.
Yeah, like super well rounded, and he's a super fucking nice guy as well. Like a super fucking. So yeah, Richard, if you're listening, James wants a word. Cheers. But yeah, I mean, the thing I was going to ask, do you think? What's your idea? Like, I don't want to turn this into a martial arts thing, but like there's the hot topic in MMA at the moment is fighter pay, right? Like making a union and all this kind of thing. Like, do you think there should be something similar between photographers and videographers?
That's a good question. My gut reaction then when you said it was no. That's kind of your job as a business person to be able to be able to sell your services, and that's kind of the price of entry, I think. It's a very good question. I thought about this with fighters a lot because I'd obviously love my business to go in the direction of just working with fighters. The main goal being work for a big MMA promotion or a big jiu-jitsu show or a mix of all of them. That kind of be my bread and butter. But it's difficult because I'm trying to sell videos to fighters who majority of the time
haven't got any fucking money.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's certainly something I've thought about. In terms of creatives, my gut reaction says maybe no, because yeah, that kind of feels like the price of entry. Kind of just that's part of the job. But I'm all ears. Like, if you've heard any of what's your perspective?
Like, I don't have any perspective really. Like, the only reason I ask that is because I feel like, you know, like one of my closest friends, one of my best friends, is a photographer. Like Rolling Shutter. Have you seen Rolling Shutter on Instagram? Yeah. So
I listen to the podcast.
Yeah, exactly. So Rolling Shutter is one of my best friends, and he's incredibly skilled and all of this kind of stuff. But what I wondered is, like, not necessarily a union or whatever, or like a grouping for a financial perspective, but more like a collection of people that are able to discuss ideas and entry points and this and that and the next thing. Because, you know, like Steve Rolling Shutter, he has his specific brand, right? His specific style. And I don't know whether this is just antithesis of, you know, business and whatever, but like there may be roles or jobs that you would see that would be more suited to his style and vice versa, and you could share that, right? Because I don't, you know, like everyone, my thought is like everyone can eat, right? Everyone can win, everyone can earn money. And I also understand that all of you are generally independent contractors, and you've got to pay your bills and you've got to earn and you've got to invest in your own businesses. But I wonder whether there's like a platform for guys who are accomplished, like yourself, Shauna Roberts, Maggie Left, like Attack the Back.
Very, very kind of you to put me in that field.
Of course, like, you know, all of these guys that, you know, Riley the BTEC Raptor, like these kind of guys that are coming up, that, or some of you are coming up, like, and like Riley is coming up, just started, but the rest of you guys are like professional visual media creatives, and I feel like there should be a platform in the scene that's so fucking small anyway, right? A way that you congregate and share and like help each other to grow rather than always compete each other, because there's always going to be competition, right? That's the nature of the business. But competition, like healthy competition, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd love there to be more. Well, maybe I'm just not part of the conversation, but maybe I'd love to be more involved with other jiu-jitsu or other MMA combat sports in general related photographers and creatives. I'd love to be kind of involved in that community. Maybe that's just a part of me just not doing enough to be a part of it, and not being at the right shows, and not kind of just more of it on me. But I'd love to be a part of that conversation, and I think there's definitely merit to having those kind of groups. There's a guy in particular, on Chris Humphreys, a photographer, really unbelievably talented photographer, based in London, does a lot of event stuff, all the big festivals and shows and that. And they've got something called the Chroma Collective, which was him and then all the same kind of people in the same kind of field doing all the same shows or similar ones. And they now they're like I think they essentially work as a business, and will kind of whoever's style, like you say, whoever's style is better suited to this job, you go and do this one. We need 2 people, we need a second shooter, we need video, whatever, and they kind of divvy it up like that. I believe that's the way it looks anyway. But yeah, I think there's definitely more room for more communication and more just general cooperation between creatives.
Yes.
Like there's no, like you're right, kind of there's no union for like there is for teachers or for railway workers or whatever. There's no, not that I know of. I mean, I'm sure there probably is something there, but it's not known to me. Yeah, it'd be nice just to have conversations with the creatives in the same fields, and just kind of like, how's business? How are you doing this? How do you do it? And what's going on? Like that kind of stuff would be really useful.
Yeah, because like when I studied philosophy at A level, and one of the things the very first instance of what this podcast actually now is, what I really wanted to do at the beginning when I was like 16, 17, was to put like a working group together, a working group where lads or females could just come and we'd sit about and talk about just a topic of philosophy or whatever. And you know, that was due to my interest of having long form conversations about interesting topics and or speaking to people, right? And this is obviously kind of now what this has turned into, where we're just having conversations about anything. But you know, I feel like the difference between photography, and again, this is not a slight on the photography industry, but it's like, it's not professional in the same way that a teaching industry or a mining industry or a railway industry, like there's not the legacy there. There's not that sort of history, I guess, behind it. And like teaching is probably just as fucking competitive as a photography gig, I imagine, if not more competitive, because there's way more teachers, right? But I wonder whether, as you say, there is not necessarily like a conglomerate where like the Chroma people that you mentioned there, like not, I mean, maybe there's room for that in the jiu-jitsu MMA scene, but more like an open forum where photographers can have a discussion, a bi-weekly, bi-monthly, bi-yearly, whatever it is, discussion, and you can integrate yourself into the community, because these are like-minded people at the end of the day, right? Yeah. They're people that get similar things that you do from making videos and taking photos and all that sort of stuff. And I just wonder whether there's something there. I feel like, to me, there is something there. In the same vein,
no, I think you're absolutely right. Carry on.
Like my only thought is like, again, you know, bringing jiu-jitsu into it is like cross training, right? For the longest time, you're a crayon if you go and train at another gym. Whereas now it kind of feels like even all the top level guys in the US are training with each other, and the top level guys in the UK are training with each other, and then they go to compete against each other on the weekend. Like it kind of feels like if the skills are there, then surely you share them. Yeah,
absolutely. And I kind of like that sort of aspect of, we can be really good friends, but we're going to compete, and it's going to be difficult, and we're going to do things to each other that kind of, in the same way as with training, like you'd be best friends with someone and then beat the shit out of each other. Mm-hmm. And I quite like the competition aspect of business and being like, listen, I really like you, but we're going to try and beat each other. And that's good. I think that's a good thing. I think it's really easy to take it the wrong way and think like, this guy's trying to take money off me. But there's the other aspect of this guy's doing doing X amount of things differently to I am. I need to learn these. He's got some stuff that he should probably learn off me. And I think the competition like that fosters those kind of improvements. And I think maybe that might be. I think certainly in jiu-jitsu photographers, I think, and jiu-jitsu creatives in general, I think that could be something that could work really, really well, where you're all trying to compete for the same jobs, but it's all in a friendly kind of way. And if someone else gets it, cool. There's other jobs out there, like everyone can still eat, everyone can, do you know what I mean? There's no, yeah, I think you've definitely got a point. Yeah. So if any combat sports photographers or videographers that happen to be listening that want to start that kind of conversation, like feel free to drop me a DM or anything at all, and we'll kind of start that conversation from there. Yeah, I'm absolutely interested in that, definitely.
Yeah, because I think like the only other thing I'll add, the only other caveat I'll add is like ethical business competition. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, that we all know and have all heard of, especially in the scenes that we're running in, whether it be photography, jiu-jitsu, or even my scene in the IT industry. Like, there's always somebody that's a little bit unethical, right? Just a little bit, or sometimes a lot bit. And that creates a level of disdain, and that creates a level of vitriol that I don't think is necessary. As you say, you know, if you go out and you get a gig that somebody else was trying to do, they can ask you why. Like, why did you get that gig? Why did you get that gig? What do you have that I don't have, right? And then you can say, well, oh, it's because I have this kind of style of editing, or I do this, or I do that. And they're like, all right, cool. And then they can choose. Yeah. You can now take that information on wisely, or you can take it negatively. I mean, that's up to you. You can do whatever you want, right? And if there is a precedent set within this community that actually the rules, quote unquote, the social norms of that community is that it's there for the furthering of everyone's skills, everyone's career, everyone's palette, everyone's environment, then I don't see how that can be overall a negative thing.
Yeah, I think the kind of people that are likely to be able to take on that kind of competition and that are likely to be involved in something like that are also the kind of people that will take any kind of negative well, and that will think, oh, that guy got whatever job instead of me, or whatever the situation is. I need to fix this. And I think those the kind of people that would choose to be involved in that kind of collective would also be the kind of people that would take that well.
Yeah, because I mean, one of my favorite training partners, his name is Tom Allen. Shout out to Tom Allen if you're listening to this. I mean, we smash the shit out of each other in training, right? It's literally 1 for 1. One day he'll beat the shit out of me, and the next day I'll beat the shit out of him, right? And it just literally depends on who turns up more hungry that day. and then at the end of it, we'll sit and we'll just shoot the breeze about anything, right? Or we'll play games together, or we'll do whatever. Like, and I wonder whether that same element of sparring, quote unquote, but outside of that element, there is still that camaraderie, there's still that close relationship, that close bond, whether that could be taken off the mats and into the other realms of business, right? Not just jiu-jitsu, but business, you know.
I'd be very interested if who would be interested in that, and who would take it well. I'd be very, like I said, if there's anyone that kind of hears that and it kind of resonates with them, like let's stay in touch. I definitely feel like that'd be really cool.
So one thing I did want to ask is why photography and not music?
I wasn't very good. I think I could just. I got like in the space of a couple of years, I improved quite a lot playing guitar, and then kind of I started at 13, and then by the time I was 15, I got to the stage where I am now, and I kind of learned the pentatonic scale and thought, oh, I can kind of figure out most of the music that I really like, which was kind of blues-based metal and blues-based like classic rock and that kind of stuff. So it didn't feel particularly necessary for me to work really, really hard and learning loads of other stuff. And that's clearly the wrong attitude to have. But I could jam with my mates. I could say, right, you play in this key and then I'll just jam along or whatever. And that's kind of the way music went for me. If I'd taken it more seriously Yeah, I think because there's a lot of people around me that knew music theory and like had much better understanding of music, were much better rhythm players, and didn't just kind of riff away and do whatever I wanted to do. Um, yeah, I feel like I just took I made the wrong decisions regards to learning it, and I think that was just a matter of age. I was young at the time, and then by the time I was like 15, I was kind of more interested in girls and going out and that kind of stuff, and like life just kind of got in the way, and I've picked it up and written stuff in the meantime. When I was at uni, I was writing a lot. I bought a Boss RC3 loop pedal and would just jam all the time with that. So I've got like there's hundreds and hundreds of riffs and little bits that I've just never done anything with that I personally believe are good and that could. I think I've got a good ear. I think because of my musical education in regards to going to gigs all the time and kind of being around that kind of stuff, and just generally being a paid creative anyway, I think I've got a good ear. And so there's stuff in there that could work. It's just not. I've not got the right framework to put it together myself. Like I've not got. Like ideally, I think the dream was to be able to sit there with a laptop and a bunch of recording equipment and just write the drums, write the bass, write the guitar, and then just give it to someone else to sort of sing over the top and that kind of stuff. And I've never built the skills to be able to do that, and just got frustrated that I couldn't do it, despite the fact that I didn't actually put the work in to get there.
Sure.
It's just I think that was just. I think maybe part of it is that it's not the thing that I really, really love, and I do love it, but not in the same way that I love putting videos together. Like once I get into or editing photos, whatever, I get into a certain flow where, like, I do the awkward bit of running through the project files and taking the clips that I might use, and then once I've got those, the ones that I might use in the timeline, and then maybe go for a little coffee or something, come back, and then just hop into flow and just start pulling things together. And a lot of Stones and Strangles fell together like just it kind of put itself together. Like music's the most important part for me. I'll go through. I mean, I use Epidemic Sound mostly, so I'll go through Epidemic Sound and just run through all the music, find the bits that I like. I'll just sit with some good headphones and run through a bunch of their music and whatever gives me goosebumps or tickles that part of my brain that thinks it's going to go well. I'll take it and then throw it over some of the clips, and then eventually things just put themselves together. There's no like, I don't feel like it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything. It feels like it's just happening.
Mm-hmm.
And music's the most important part of it for me. That's the bit that I need first.
Yeah, so I've only ever done one video, and it took me fucking hell. It took me a long time, right? A long time.
It used to take me 2 weeks to put together a 1 minute highlight video that I could put together in like 20 minutes now.
Yeah, so basically what I did was during lockdown, some of the boys came over to my house, so we did some rolls, right?
Yeah.
And socially distant rolls, obviously. And I filmed it on my iPhone, right? I got a little tripod and I put it in the corner and I filmed them. And then I put together a video, like a highlight of all the decent subs or whatever that we got. And it took me fucking ages. The first thing is like clipping it. Oh my God, the clipping took so long. And then obviously I was learning how to do stuff and learning how the tool. So I used DaVinci Resolve, but like I was learning how the tool worked. I was learning what I wanted it to be, and fuck me, I don't envy you in the slightest. It's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun, but fuck me, it's time consuming.
You get past that. It used to take me. I remember agonising over. I used to do a lot of work for Rosie's and Popwell. If you've ever been out in Chester, you'll know Rosie's, Popwell, those kind of places. I used to put together highlight videos, and I remember I used to agonise over those things. It used to take me. I'd be pulling my hair out, like really, really stressed out, trying to put them together, and it would take me like 2-3 weeks of just graft to put together like a 1 minute advert. That now I could probably do it in probably like half an hour and have something much, much better at the end of it. I think that's just part of the skill. You just get better at it. You groove those kind of tracks and kind of get into the spaces where it's just a part of your brain. It's just a part of something that you know how to do.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about Stones and Strangles. How did that come about?
So I went to. In fact, it started kind of when Dan put a post out on Facebook just saying, I'm going to be no longer going to be teaching at Mill Hill or whatever, and I'm going to be kind of traveling the world, training, teaching, working on competing, that kind of stuff. And I saw that and messaged him immediately. I was like, I'm a photographer, filmmaker, trying to live a really similar lifestyle. That sounds really cool. I think personally, you need someone following you around, documenting all this stuff. It's me. I'm going to be in Tenerife when you're teaching. I'll chat to you about it then. So then I kind of like set it up. So when we went to Tenerife, kind of met up, I had a bit of a mare of a week. I popped a rib on the first day. So the plan was to do all my filming on the first day or the first couple of days and just give him a highlight video, the one that I did for him, and then just train like 3 times a day for the rest of the thing. But I popped a rib in the second class. I think it was just sparring actually. Yeah, popped a rib and was like immediately like, oh, this is not going to go well. So I was gutted, really, really upset. I kind of moped for a couple of days, felt really, really sorry for myself. And kind of felt for the rest of the trip, I wasn't really my full self, just because I was just so gutted. So I spent a lot of time partying, drinking cocktails, chasing Irish girls, and just having a lot of fun, really. And yeah, so I ended up filming a lot of stuff with Dan. It was Steve Gawthorpe the week before, and I watched a lot of it. But I was, like I said, the first week I was a bit sort of sulky. I just had to get over it because I was just so upset. So I just partied a lot the first week, and then kind of the second week kind of sort of dragged myself out a little bit more, and kind of I was at pretty much every class, and then filmed everything. And just Dan. You know, have you ever met Dan?
I have met him. Well, I've not met him in person, but he did the commentary for Pantheon. So I've been around Dan, but I've done the podcast with Dan.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I listened to that actually. But yeah, he's dead easy to hang around with, kind of really chilled out, and he just made it really easy to kind of just slowly push the idea of let's do some work together. So then he announced his tour, and I just really quickly put together a highlight, like an advert for the tour, and I did that with the footage from Tenerife, and then did it for free, sent it over, and then he was like, do you want to come with me for parts of it? And it worked out that Scotland was going to work out the best, and obviously because he was going to do all the stone lifting there. So we kind of came to a price, agreed it, got it all in, and then I got the train up, and yeah, I was supposed to fly, but the flights were cancelled for, I think it was the start of coronavirus. I think it was
right.
March, kind of around. I think I came back on the 13th, so I must have gone on the 5th or the 6th. So it was kind of around that time. The flights were cancelled for whatever reason, so I ended up getting the train up to Glasgow, and then going from there. Yeah, but what an awesome experience. That was really, really cool. Yeah, kind of. I'm dying to get back out on another sort of big trip and film something cool. I'm itching for it again.
If I said to you, what would be the dream? Who would be the dream? What would be the dream if you had one project?
That's a very good question. You've stumped me a little bit. I think because the general idea of the business has been to get into combat sports and film for a major organisation, regardless. That's the dream. I think any of it is. I think anyone just getting to be around these kind of people, getting to train, getting to film all of it, and be able to create something that really means something to me. And that whole thing is the dream. I know it's a bit of a boring answer, but kind of
not at all.
Yeah, all of it is great. There's no. It's hard for me to pick. It's hard for me to pick someone out because I'd be excited about doing all of it.
I think it's a good answer, to be honest. Like, it's a good answer because it's not something that's unattainable. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not something that's unattainable at all. I think, Stones and Strangles will have done. For anyone that hasn't gone and watched it, I'll put the link to one of the episodes or the series of episodes in the show notes, and you can go and have a little look. And yeah, like, I think those things, working with those guys will do big things for your name inside the space. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, obviously you'll have work outside of the space, but if inside the space is where you're looking to go, then and that will do big things for you inside the space.
Yeah, I've had a couple of jobs out of it. People have seen it and then booked me. So it's definitely it was worth it regardless of what happened at the end. But
yeah, of course.
It's definitely been helpful. It's definitely been good. And it's a nice introduction to the scene, really, because I'm new to training. I've only been training for a year and a half, so
Okay.
I'm new to all of it. So it was nice to get like a little introduction, and kind of, I saw Simon Hayes shared it to the underground, and that was just a little moment, because Simon's a big deal, and like I've been meaning to, this is kind of a bit of an accountability thing for me. Like I'm going to message him. I was going to just ask like what advice he might have, or kind of what about the film industry, and if there's any opportunities or anything like that. It's certainly something that it was cool seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know, I just get this kind of this overwhelming feeling that there's positive things for people that have the sense of drive and the sense of achievement and the sense of effort that you have, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think something that's come across in this conversation is a very similar tale to most people that I would determine to be successful, and that's that there's been some shitty stuff along the way, right? But then there's been an understanding that stuff isn't necessarily conducive to how life has to be. Yeah. And then there's been an element of control taken, and then there's been some things put in place in order to achieve what you determine to be your goals, right? Like, who knows? In 10 years, you might decide you hate photography and videography, and that you want to be a gardener or whatever it is, right? Like, who fucking knows? But the idea that the work is what's important. It's the effort that's what's important. It's the graft, as you put it, that's what's important. Like, I think that's something that I find is a similar trait in a lot of successful people, I think.
Yeah, I think I picked up that was the main thing that I got from knocking doors. Like, and that whole environment, and the way you were taught to do it, and kind of the attitude that was drilled into you. There's no shaking that. Like, that's with me forever. There's no to be able to go, and it was one of those 100% commission kind of gigs. So there's no way of, you're not going to survive, and you're certainly not going to be able to teach other people to do it if you don't put the work in and figure out your own kind of methodology and what works for you. And that kind of that sort of determination through anything, getting shouted at, spat on, door slammed in your face, like police called, and you're all sorts, like, there's kind of, when all those things happen and you've got in someone that you're interviewing, you're trying to convince them that this is the job that they want to do and this is the business that they want to join. There's a level of calm that you have to have where everything's going wrong and you've still got to impress this person that this is what they need to do, and you've got another person with you that you're training that sucks and they're really struggling and they've not got a good attitude, and you're having to turn that around, and you're getting into your absolutely battered Renault Clio that someone has kindly kicked the door in Whitmarines in Wolverhampton on a day's knocking doors, and you've got to convince all these people that this is the thing that you want to do. And like, I almost did it. Like, I built a relatively big team, but it didn't work. But like, there's lessons there that have never gone away, and I think they were, like I said, that's why it was one of the most important learning experiences, was just because it was just the shit that you have to go through to be able to make money, and still have a smile on your face and still be able to sell to the next person is invaluable.
Yeah, and I think, unless there's something specific that you want to bring up, like, I think that's probably a beautiful place to end, right? Is that there is always something, there's always something next, right? Even if you're getting your door kicked in and the police called on you and people spitting on you and whatever, like, there's a route to, how should I phrase this? There's a route to meaning, right? There's a route to purpose.
Yes.
And I don't want to say happiness, because I don't really think that exists. I don't really want to say like success, because I don't imagine you deem yourself to be successful because you haven't reached this dream or whatever it is. And I imagine most successful people wouldn't say that they're successful. But, I think there's a route to meaning and there's a route to purpose if you just accept and if you do your best to realign yourself with what you want to do and have an understanding of what you want to do. And I think that's the biggest challenge actually, is trying to figure out what it is you want to do, and how people do that, how people come across that is something that is, I think, one of the biggest problems that we as a generation face.
Yeah, I think a lot of getting through stuff like that was like, this is going to make a really cool story one day.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be like, just being able to find meaning in whatever the hardship was, or whatever kind of, and same with anyone going through anything. There's being able to find that level of, there's a lesson to be learned from here, and it's going to help me. Whatever the struggle is that you're going through, there's going to be some level of positive in it, and you have to kind of focus on that. And that was how we got through all of it. It was like, this is going to be a cool story one day, and that's kind of how I think about anything bad that happens to me, or anything that I'm struggling with. I kind of think it's going to make sense. It's going to kind of, whatever story that's going to get told, like, it's going to work.
Indeed. Wow. Well, I mean, first of all, tell people where they can find you.
Yes, everything is Bullingham, Bullingham VMCO, so Visual Media Company. Everything on all the usual platforms. Website is bullinghamvisualmedia.com. Anyone wants any work doing, anyone wants to collaborate on anything, anyone just wants to have a chat, or anyone wants to get involved in terms of, or the creatives that want to have a little, even just a chat about how business is, stuff like that. Like, I'd be really open to it. Yeah, that's kind of it, really. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, my friend. Look, I mean, having followed some of your work previously, like it was somebody that I definitely was interested in having a conversation with, and it's been one that I've really, really enjoyed. So although, you know, you persevered through the earlier technical issues, and we had some we had some scheduling problems and all that sort of stuff, and yeah, here we are, we got it done, and yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very, very, very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, man.